Hello, this is George.
And Bonnie.
And this is Adonai's Sanctuary Truth Classroom. It's December 26th. The day after they celebrate the Messiah's birth, even though we know for sure that it wasn't that day. But something that is kind of interesting is that the so-called believers or Christians, they set this up real close to Hanukkah.
Mm-hmm. I think it was,
8 days or 7 days or 10 days separate them. And Hanukkah was here long before Christmas as they were celebrated. So I just wonder why they did that on December 25th. I could find out if I studied enough. I don't ever do any studying.
Probably. Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
Okay, Adonai Sanctuary Truth Classroom. One more. You ready?
Next lesson.
Section 21 or chapter 21. Section 21 of Adonai's letter to society about Shemot. English translation is... There, now they can see me better.
That's right. That's the important part.
Exodus. My sweetie's going to read 21:1.
These are the rulings you are to present to them.
She just read more rules for the children of Israel? Oh my goodness. Adonai is telling Moses more rules. These rules. This was so interesting. Well, it was to us. 21:2, please.
If you purchase a Hebrew slave, he is to work 6 years. But in the 7th, he is to be given his freedom without having to pay anything.
If you purchase a Hebrew to be your slave. We also must realize that if your parents or your family members wasn't doing all that good, the parents could sell their child into slavery to help with the financial need. We have heard of times when a husband would do such a thing to help his family, knowing he would return after 6 years. Interesting. Mm-hmm. It was almost like hiring yourself out to be a permanent worker for someone else for 6 years stretch. For 6 years. And being paid up front. They didn't pay him when they were slaves, but they paid him up front. Now that doesn't go for the man. That doesn't just go for the man. My sweetie's going to read 21:3.
If he is single, he is to leave single. If he is married when he came, his wife is to go with him when he leaves.
If he comes single, he leaves single. If the whole family comes with him, the whole family goes with him. Except if the master wants to increase the servants, you might say permanently, the master could or would try to have his servants for life by giving the single Hebrew slave a wife. Now, what good would that do? Because we find out what good that would do in 21:4. Read 21:4, please.
But if his master gave him a wife, and she bore him sons or daughters, then the wife and her children will belong to her master, and he will leave by himself.
See, then the wife and the children belong to the master. They're his property. The man may leave after 6 years, but he would leave his family behind, according to the rules. But he doesn't have to leave. there is a way to be with his wife and children, you might say permanently. Read 21:5, please.
Nevertheless, if the slave declares, I love my master, my wife, and my children, so I don't want to go free.
I love my master. Now that's not something you hear from people who think of slavery right now. I love my master, my wife, and my children so much I don't want to go free. All right. Would that be one of the reasons the master got you that wife in the first place? Think about it. That's an interesting question. In the hopes that your love for your family, you wouldn't want to leave them and would have your services plus your whole family services for life. But how would you show your master that? Another interesting thing. 21:6, please.
Then his master is to bring him before God, and there at the door, or doorpost, his master is to pierce his ear with an awl, and the man will be his slave for life. Ouch.
He brings you before Adonai to show your intentions at Adonai's door. You have your ear pierced with an awl.
Ow.
My wife just said, ow.
I've pierced ears and that would hurt.
How about if you're a daughter? We gotta cover the whole family here. Read 21:7.
If a man sells his daughter as a slave, she is not to go free like the man's slaves.
The daughter doesn't go free in the 7th year, but there seems to be a stipulation or stipulations. Read 21:2 again, please.
If you purchase a Hebrew slave, he is to work for 6 years. But in the 7th, he is to be given his freedom without having to pay anything.
Okay. But what happens if they don't do that?
Okay.
You know, let them go after 6 years? Will lightning strike them? Who is going to know? How many people sat down and wrote down the day you became a slave? In Jeremiah 34, 8 through 22, my honey's going to read, to find out what happens.
8 through 22.
8 through 22. I can take a break.
This word came to Jeremiah from Adonai after King Zedekiah made a covenant with all people of Jerusalem to emancipate them. Everyone who had a male or female slave who was a Hebrew was to let him go free. None was to keep as his slave a fellow Jew. All the leaders and all the people listened who had entered into the covenant, wherein everyone was to free his male and female slaves and not keep them in bondage any longer. They listened and they let them go. But afterwards they changed their minds. They made the male and female slaves whom they had freed return, and they brought them back into subjection as slaves. Therefore the word of Adonai came to Jeremiah from Adonai. Here is what Adonai, the God of Israel, says. When I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, where they lived as slaves, I made this covenant with them. At the end of 7 years, every one of you who has set free his brother Hebrew, who has been sold to you and served you 6 years, you are to let him go free from you. But your ancestors did not listen to me or pay attention. Now you repented. You did what was right from my viewpoint when each of you proclaimed freedom to his fellow, and you made covenant before me in the house bearing my name. Going to 22. Then you changed your minds. You profaned my name when each of you took back your male and female slaves, whom you had set free to live as they wished, and brought them back into subjection as your slaves. Therefore, here's what Adonai said. You did not heed me or proclaim freedom, each to his brother and each to his neighbor. So now I proclaim for you a freedom, says Adonai. For sword, plague, and famine, I will make you an object of honor make you an object of horror to all the kingdoms on earth. As for the men who violated my covenant by not living up to the conditions of the covenant, which they made in the presence when they cut the calf in two and passed between the parts, the leaders of Judah, the leaders of Jerusalem, the officials, the Kohen, and all the people of the land who passed between the parts of the calf, I will hand them over to their enemies, hand them over to those who seek their lives, and their corpses will become food for birds in the air and wild animals. Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his officials I will hand over to their enemies, to those who seek their lives, and the army of the king of Babel, which has withdrawn. I will give the orders, says Adonai, and cause them to return to this city. They will attack it, capture it, and burn it to the ground, and I will make the cities of Judah desolate and uninhabited.
Wow.
It's
Just
a
because
lot of
they
stuff.
disobeyed.
Oh, mm-hmm.
My writing here goes, oh, go ahead and disobey Adonai. So what? Look what happened to them. So what? Who is going to know? Matter of fact, who's going to know what Messiah you're serving? What name you use? Who you bow down to? And how long your whole society has been doing it? It's only been 391 years, and look at the damage that Catholic priest Jerome has caused you and yours. Look what happened to them. Because they wouldn't free the slaves that they had, and they didn't follow Adonai's rules. And you'll find that out again back when we get to Jeremiah. But read 21:8 now, please.
If her master married her, but decides she no longer pleases him, then he is allowed her to be redeemed. He is not allowed to sell her to a foreign people because he has treated her unfairly.
Now this gets a little confusing and interesting. She displeases him now. Then he can't sell her, who has now become his wife, to foreign people. Why? Because he has treated her unfairly. Interesting. 21:9 seems like it would be one way to leave her husband, yet still stay with the family. Interesting. Read 21:9, please.
If he has her marry his son, then he is to treat her like a daughter.
If his wife, if the master has his wife set aside because she displeases him, and he has her marry his son, the master must treat her as a daughter, not a wife. If he has her marry his son. If her husband marries another woman, and he hasn't done this, given her to his son, or married him, there are stipulations for her also. In that case, read 21:10, please.
See, Anne's on.
Hi, from Kentucky. We're in
Can't
the
see
middle.
what she says.
Pardon?
She said something.
Anne says hi, from Kentucky.
Oh.
Oh.
Verse 10, just 10, right?
Verse 10.
If he marries another wife, he is not to reduce her food, clothing, or marital rights.
Now this gets kind of interesting. He can't reduce her food, clothing, and he must keep up with the marital rights. No, wait a minute. Now you got two wives now. 21:11 states if he doesn't provide those three things, well, read 21:11, please.
If he fails to provide her with these things, she is to be given her freedom without having to pay anything.
If this slave girl becomes his wife and he isn't performing any of his husbandly duties, she is given her freedom without any payment by her or anyone. That was kind of interesting. I told you it was going to be a little different. There are more rules coming for the Hebrews from Adonai, like Shemot or Exodus 21:12. Read that, please.
Whoever attacks a person and causes his death must be put to death.
Straightforward, isn't it?
Pretty much.
If you attack someone, kill him, you must be put to death. Yet 21:13 clarifies it even more. Read 21:13, please.
If it was not premeditated, but an act of God, then I will designate for you a place which he can flee.
If it was not premeditated, if it wasn't intentional, let's say Adonai just let it happen, then it says, I, Adonai, will designate the place to flee to. To confirm this, we need to turn to one of the four places. Well, how about Numbers 35? 9-14, please.
Adonai said to Moses, tell the people of Israel, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you are to designate for yourselves cities that will be cities of refuge for you, to which anyone who kills someone by mistake can flee. These cities are to be a refuge for you from the dead person's next of kin, who might otherwise avenge his kinsman's death by slaying the killer prior to him standing trial before the community. In regard to the cities you are to give, there are to be 6 cities of refuge. You are to give 3 cities east of the Jordan and 3 cities in the land of Canaan. They will be the cities of refuge.
In someone's death, let's say your friend or relative, and it isn't by premeditated murder, then the one person may go to a city of refuge run by priests. It'll say that future times. Of the tribe of the Levites. Where, well, read Numbers 35:15.
These 6 cities will serve as refuge for the people of Israel, as well as for the foreigners, the resident aliens with them, so that anyone who kills someone by mistake may flee there.
For the people of Israel. Also foreigners. And anyone who is living with them, that's for anyone who kills someone accidentally, you might say, or you might say, by mistake, can flee to this town of refuge run by the priest. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting. Told you going to be
Never
6
heard
cities.
of that before.
Back to Shemot 21, Exodus 21. We like how 21:15 states it so plainly. Read 21:15.
Whoever attacks his father or mother must be put to death.
Now here it gets a little personal. Don't let some ambulance chaser lawyer, don't let some ambulance chasing lawyer to us, doesn't that advertisement on TV make you think back when you may have been young, and nowadays those lawyers are on TV advertising, and we used to call them ambulance chasers. Seems like a new breed of ambulance chasers, doesn't it? I know they would never like this. I'm glad most lawyers probably aren't watching this. They would not like that statement. For Exodus 21:15 states what should happen when you attack your father and mother. Did it say what happened to him?
Yep. Yep.
Put to death.
Yep.
Shemot 21:16. Read that, please. Exodus 21:16.
Whosoever kidnaps someone must be put to death, regardless of whether he has already sold him or the person is found still in his possession.
The word kidnap in
Pretty
Hebrew.
black and white.
The word kidnap in Hebrew is ganab. G-A, little house over the A, N-A-B. You actually pronounce it G-A-W-N-A-B. Ganab. Which means to steal, to thieve, to carry away. In other words, the word kidnap a person fits in that writing perfectly. Kidnap, to sell him. Even if he hasn't been sold, but is found still in his possession, the kidnapper is to pay for his crime by being put to death. Did you get that far yet?
The kidnapper?
Yep.
That's what I just read.
We need to remember We need to remember these rules are for the Hebrews. Remember? These rules are for the Hebrews. They sound more like common sense to us, but these writings at that time were stated for the children of Israel, God's chosen people. Remember, read 21:15 again, please.
I have to turn the page.
I know you gotta go back.
Whoever attacks his father or mother must be put to death.
Now read 21:17.
Whoever curses his father or mother must be put to death.
Back then, you were to show respect to your parents. Things kind of changed, haven't they? Not only if your parents spoiled you, no, it was to show respect because that is what Adonai stated, not me. Isn't that what you just read?
That's what it says.
Shemot 21:18 through and 19. If you get injured in a fight, the one who hits you is responsible for any injury during the fight if you get hit with a stone or fist. It states he is responsible for your care until you have completely recovered. I guess I was supposed to have her read that first. Read 21:18 and 19.
If two people fight and one hits the other with a stone or with his fist, and the injured party doesn't die but is confined to his bed, then if he recovers enough to be able to walk around outside, even if with a cane, the attacker will be free of liability except to compensate him for his loss of time and take responsibility for his care until his recovery is complete.
So if a guy can get up, walk around outside with the cane even, hobbling around out there, then it's kind of, you pay up to that point, and then he's on his own. 21:20, please.
If a person beats his male or female slave with a stick so severely that he dies, he is to be punished.
With a stick, and the male or female slave dies, he is to be held accountable and punished. Yet 21:21 says, read 21:21.
Except that if the slave lives a day or two, he is not to be punished, since the slave is his property.
If the slave doesn't die immediately, but lives a day or two, then according to Shemot or Exodus 21:21, the slave owner isn't to be punished because the slave is his property. Now that, I wrote this. Now that isn't from the Gospel of George. No, that last part came from every Bible we studied it about. What that one verse said, 9 different Bibles, in 9 different Bibles. If you want to show your dislike about that writing, you need to remember, just because you don't approve, that verse came from Moses, or to Moses, from Adonai himself. And if you want to show your dislike toward Adonai and his words, that's between you and him. We only study for what is the truth in the words from Adonai, not in the word of today or today's viewpoint. Actually, we care very little what today's viewpoint is. See, anybody feels, I dropped my paper. See, anybody feels they must choose between the viewpoint of today or Adonai's viewpoint. Well, to us, that's what we would call, and Brother George says it all the time, that would be a real no-brainer. It's hard to believe if you hear the truth, what Adonai is saying, and you have to choose between one or the other, and you pick what man has said. Of course, they've done that for centuries, George. Yep. Okay, people, how about the rules for a pregnant woman during a fight? She shouldn't be in a fight anyway.
No.
Let's say she is. The rules about a pregnant woman during a fight. The first place where this is the first place, really, where we may bring in judges. Usually they've never talked about bringing in judges, but here they say bring in Shemot 21:22, please.
If people are fighting with each other and happen to hurt a pregnant woman so badly that her unborn child dies, then even if no other harm follows, he must be fined. He must pay the amount set by the woman's husband and confirmed by judges.
Confirmed by the judges. Most of the Bibles we looked at state if a man or men are fighting, yet the Hebrew word used there is enosh, E-N-O-S-H-E, enosh, which really and usually meant a mortar.
Immortal.
A mortal. This division, stated by the English writing, it's called man for their general terminology. What is that word?
Definition.
No wonder I couldn't figure it out. You might say if people fight, either man or woman, this could still occur. Yet almost every Bible states man. To us, that one word finding was interesting. Yet 21:33 gets a little more technical on any punishment. Read 21:33, please.
If someone removes a covering from a cistern or digs one and fails to cover it, and an ox or donkey fall in, that's 33, just 33?
Mm-hmm. That must be where some get the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. Moses ruled from Adonai, 21 verses 26 and 27, please.
Oh, it's 21:23. No wonder that didn't make sense what I read.
Was it 21:23?
No, you said 33.
Oh, I'm sorry, 21:23. I'm sorry.
I thought, I didn't make what
I'm
you said
messing
didn't-
up totally.
And that's okay. We're allowed. Okay, 23 says, but if any harm follows, then you are to give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. And then, I'm sorry, that was 23 and 24. I'm sorry, I went on.
That must be, and that's why it didn't make any sense what she read and what I read, because I'm goofy. That must be where some get the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. More rules from Adonai in 21, 26, and 27, please.
If a person hits a male or female slave's eye and destroys it, he must let him go free in compensation for the eye. If he knocks out a male or female slave tooth, he must let him go free for compensation for the tooth.
Now, wait a minute. If he hits him and he dies the next day, he isn't held accountable. But the compensation for the slave's eye or tooth is freedom. To me, that's kind of interesting. 21:28, please.
If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox is to be stoned and its flesh not eaten, but the owner of the ox will have no further liability.
Gives the owner of the ox an out with the liability, unless the ox did gore before. Then the rulings get a little more harsh or intense. Read 29, please.
However, if the ox was in the habit of goring in the past, and the owner was warned but did not confine it, so that it ended up killing a man or woman, then the ox is to be stoned, and the owner too is to be put to death.
Ox to be stoned.
Ox and be stoned.
Well, if you have an ox and he has a habit of goring people, and you can walk away from it and just go, oh, I'm sorry. Ox to be stoned, and the owner also to be put to death, unless, read 21, 30, and 31, please.
However, a ransom may be imposed on him, and the death penalty will be commuted if he pays the amount imposed. If the ox gores 21 or 30 and 31, right?
Yeah.
If the ox gores a son or a daughter, the same rule applies.
If he pays the amount, the death penalty is overturned. The same rule applies for a son or daughter. But how about if your ox gores someone else's slave? Now this could be interesting. Read 21:32, please.
If the ox gores a male or female slave, the owner must give their master 12 ounces of silver, and the ox is to be stoned to death.
The owner of the slave gets 12 ounces of silver, and the ox stoned. Let's see. If he's a slave, that means he's doing the work in a farm or the place. And that compensation is a little more harsh because they lost their worker. I guess that's what it means.
Would be to me.
During their time, and not all that long ago, people dug holes trying to find water. Now that has nothing to do with ox, does it?
No.
It could be used as a cistern, prison, well, or dungeon, a pit. We would guess it depends what you really use it for. That would determine the title of it. Like in Bereshit, or Genesis 37, 23 and 24, please.
So it was that when Joseph arrived to be with his brothers, they stripped off his robe, the long-sleeved robe he was wearing, and took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, without any water in it.
Joseph's brothers threw him into a cistern, no water in it, so you could say they threw him into a pit. You might even say it was his dungeon, until those slave traders came walking by. That would fit the terminology of that hole, wouldn't it? Now back to Shemot 21, 33 and 34, please.
If someone removes the cover from a cistern and digs one, or fails to cover, and an ox or donkey falls in, the owner of the cistern must make good the loss by compensating the animal's owner, but the dead animal will be his.
The owner was negligent by not covering the hole, so he pays for being negligent. Unless he calls one of those ambulance chasers. But the dead animal is his. If he pays for it, the dead animal is his. He just got to get him out of that hole. Now, if you steal someone's ox or sheep and you slaughter or sell it, what happens then? Oh my goodness, we're already up to 22:1. I'm sorry. No, not, and that's in the other ones. Yeah. 37.
1.
Mm-hmm.
37.
Yeah.
Verse 37. 22:37. If someone steals an ox or sheep and slaughters or sells it, he is to pay 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for sheep.
The Hebrews, and in the Hebrew, they get penalized if they steal an ox or a sheep and either sell it or kill it and sell the food. They have to pay 5 ox for that one, or 4 sheep is to be paid back for that one ox, or if that one sheep is stolen. That's the end of 21. We will be talking about 22 next week. There's a lot in that chapter. Don't know if I covered everything that should have been covered, but I covered a fair amount. I haven't the faintest idea. Next week, 22.
Yeah, actually it'll be next year, 2020. 2024 will be, actually it's a week from yesterday, but when we're on next Tuesday, it'll be
Tuesday?
January 2nd, 2024.
You mean we won't?
So I guess we'll see them all next year.
We won't get to talk until next year?
Only if you want to put another broadcast out.
Nope. I hope you learned something, not just tonight, but all year. I hope you study the scriptures. Don't just listen to me or her. You got to study yourself. Find the truth. And then make sure you're not swayed one way or another by me or a preacher or priest.
What's Ann saying?
Ann says, hi from Kentucky. Alan Nelson said, I have a question. Ann says, no gray, very black and white. That's true, Ann. Oh, Ann said, George and Bonnie, have a blessed new year. We hope to.
So
all right, Alan, what's your question? Okay.
He's got to type it in there.
Go ahead. Start typing. You have a question. Aha. I see about the parents, but would the same go with teachers? Well, I have to put it this way. The scripture talked about parents. I can't tell you what Adonai was on his mind. I can only tell you what Exodus 21 said. So, we might get to, there might be something in there that we've always missed, overlooked, believed the way some preacher, priest, or rabbi teacher said, or a friend, or a parent, without really studying the scriptures. Now, I like the question, what about teachers? Well, I can't answer that yet because he was talking about parents. Now, I can speculate, but that's just being like the preachers, priests, and rabbi teachers do now. So we can't do that. That makes sense? I hope so. Somebody type something out. Obeying. Oh, the obeying part. Well,
yeah, that would be wonderful if that happened.
It would be nice, but like I said,
it should happen, but
they should obey the teachers. Wholeheartedly, they should obey the teachers. But we aren't to that point where Adonai told us about it yet.
Maybe.
We are considered LOCO. Is that local parents?
Loco parentis in place of.
Huh?
Loco parentis means in place of.
Oh.
Like when you go from the house to a school, the teachers is considered in place of the parents.
I didn't know that.
See, George knows all that stuff. He's a college professor.
Yeah, I got all the brains on the other side.
Okay, sorry, just thinking ahead.
No, I think
that's
awesome.
That's a good question, but we can't come up with a definitive answer because Adonai hasn't told us about that yet. And we're not going to jump ahead and try to speculate what any preacher, priest, or rabbi, teacher, or principal.
Never heard that comment, though.
Or anybody else. That's a good comment.
Never heard that concept.
Yeah. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool.
And by the way, everybody.
Hey.
By the way, everybody.
Yeah. His birthday's
Alan's
coming up.
birthday's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Happy birthday. Now I don't have to call you. Happy birthday,
53.
Son. That means I'm getting old.
No,
you didn't have to say that.
Just him.
Oh.
Just him.
We're already old.
Only our kids are getting older.
Anyway. Have a great...
Thanks, Al, for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Anna.
Yeah, thanks, Ann, for joining us.
Thanks,
And Tom's on there somewhere, I'm sure.
I'm sure Tom's listening somewhere. Ann was on. Alan asked a question. We like that.
I love that.
We like that. Now the questions are coming up. I don't know why they wouldn't come up before.
Yeah,
sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But you people have a great week.
Anytime.
Alan, happy birthday tomorrow.
Hope you have a great day.
And when you wake up in the morning, you'll be another year older. Only as old as you feel. Love y'all. There's days I feel 102. And then there's days, and I know you do too. And there's days you feel 45.
Or younger.
Or younger. Have a great day.
Have a good one, guys.
Anyway, everybody else.
Please like and share this. And
thank you for tuning in.
Join us on some
thank you for them too also. But
check out our Facebook page. Al's laughing. Check out our Facebook page. And we'll see you next year.
Have a great week. See you next year. Bye.
Hey. What in the heck happened?
That was the first time Alan's been on there.
For a long time. Yeah.
He's been kind of